All right, welcome in to the Bobby Carpenter Show and super juiced to join you on this Friday. Excited. It's like it's the last weekend before we have the first ever 12-team playoff. We got Army-Navy tomorrow going. Schlegs, before we get going, I know we've talked a little bit about this. Army-Navy tomorrow. What does it mean to win the Commanders-in-Chief trophy?
Woo! Commanders-in-Chief. I mean, honestly, guys, it's the exact same thing as beating Michigan. Like, that's what it is, except it's just a 2-game,
but it's for the
round
country,
robin.
For your honor.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I mean, it's Air Force, it's Navy, it's Army. Had the privilege of being 2-0 versus those teams winning 2 Commanders and Chief trophies. With those guys, we were on a run there in the Air Force in the late 90s, early 2000s. But, this year it's a little bit different. Air Force wasn't really, didn't have really the squad that they normally have, but Army number 22 in the country, 11-1, Navy 8-3. But guess what, man? Just like everything else, like the record books are out. Like you're playing this style of offense, and that's the thing. Like these games normally are relatively close because they all kind of run the same thing. That's the difference. When these teams go play other teams, nobody's working on the triple option. But when we play together, right? That's all we face on inside drill, is this. Yeah. So it's going to be a great game. Bob, you've been to the Army-Navy game. I've never been to an Army-Navy game, though I played Army and played Navy individually, never been to this particular game. But again, it's significant because it's played by itself. It's like the one time the country just goes and watch, my honest opinion, kind of football at its purest. No NIL. Guys are all there for a specific reason. And it's great football.
It is. I took my oldest son, RJ, for his 13th birthday a couple years ago. He wore my father-in-law's sweet Navy P Coach legs. It had the little anchor buttons on it. The Navy folks loved it. The Army guys, maybe not as much, but everybody respected it. And it was awesome because my father-in-law wore that. He got that when he went to Vietnam, I think, when he was 18 years old. And pretty special to be a part of it. So, folks, if you get a chance, check it out. I believe it's on CBS. It's one of the great things. I've gone twice. I want to go back again. I'd like all my boys to be able to go and see it. And like you can be down on the field and man, they fly like that eagle. I mean, the flyovers are amazing. And it is the most intense yet respectful competition you're going to find. I mean, there's no flag planting nonsense being done. I mean, the guys are going at each other, but there's a mutual respect, like as you talked about, because everybody has a shared commonality, the shared suffering of knowing how hard it is to be at one of those military academies and have to just have a very regimented lifestyle and be very, very difficult to handle. But we've got some big news. Ohio State, Ryan came out and he was talking in his press conference earlier this week, I think on Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. And that's about the offensive line. He said all options are going to be explored. Like, maybe that's a Luke Montgomery, maybe that's a Padilla, like whoever these guys are that have played up front. I think there's going to be some experimentation. These guys, Schlegs, you train some of them. I think Carson Hinsman is a fixture in there, but you have Austin Serveld and you've got Tegra Shabola, and then you've got Montgomery who can play guards and Padilla who's mostly a center. And Hinsman can kind of do all of it. I think that there's going to be a little bit of juggling, if you will, and trying to find the best lineup of what they think can be the most effective, ultimately blocking up a very, very good Vols front.
Yeah, and Ian Moore is a freshman, somebody that I really liked in the offseason. Again, the difference is I'm not around there, Bob, as much as you are.
But you did train those dudes. You know.
Yeah, I did. But here's my biggest takeaway from this, and I had a really good conversation about it. Where does that toughness, dog mentality come into play?
Station ready. There's a term for it, Schlegs.
I know. I say that all the time, but I'm just like in this evaluation process where there's stars, and we're seeing multiple star guys, right? 5-star guys hit the portal 4 times, right? I mean, stars are just stars. It doesn't matter. Once you step on campus, I don't give a shit how many stars you got, right? Are you a dude or are you not? I'll give you an example. J.J. Smith, dude. Didn't matter how many stars he had. Just came in, did his work, right? You see Brandon Ennis, like, dude. I'm just giving you examples of younger guys. Saw Ian Moore in there. Dude, trains extremely hard, wants to compete. love Padilla, love Luke, right? But again, who's going to be the one that you unequivocally trust that's just going to go out there playing and play out? Yeah, you might beat me, but you might win that particular battle, but I'm going to win the war because I'm just going to keep coming after you. That's more of a mindset, more of a personality that I think we can't lose in regards to stars. So however that has to be shaken up, shake it up.
Yeah, it's like you said,
competition breeds excellence, man. Like, just don't look at body types and length and crap like that. Like, just go put the alphas out there. That's what I want. Put the alphas.
Well, an offensive line and really interior defensive line,
Yes.
especially on the inside, guards and defensive tackles and centers. So much of that to me, Schlegs, is like, can you bend and are you strong? Like, that's important. It's more important on the edge. But up front, like, are you nasty? Like,
Yes.
just give me the toughest dudes. Like, there's a point where, like, Schlegs, like, I'll take a couple knocks in athleticism. That's fine. You can be a little stiff. Like Andrew Norwell, you always talk about what they call him, the white rhino or the white buffalo or something. Like,
white Tatanka.
Tatanka, whatever.
Tatanka.
There you go. But he wasn't like, you don't look at him, you're like, man, that guy's super athletic. I bet he's, great at pulling. Running. He was just a freaking meat cleaver in there. He was like Bill the Butcher that would just maul dudes into the ground.
Guys, your Andrew Norwell was an undrafted free agent who became the highest paid guard in the NFL.
Wait, the general that became a slave, the slave that became a gladiator, the gladiator that defied an emperor?
That is listen, man. Like, he was the best when I got to train with him in the Jaguars, right? Because I was like, dude, listen, here's the goal. 17 games, third contract, let's go, right? And it was year 8 for him. And he had like an ankle. It was all on the left side, left ankle, left knee, left elbow. And like, we're just going to do it. Guess what? Played 17 games, got a 2-year contract playing with Washington. And so, but I go back to where he was at Ohio State. And remember, he had that long hair and just like he would do that. Like, that's what he was. But he would just do that all game to people.
He looked kind of like a serial killer. Like,
dude, he did. Like, I mean, he would be a great like fill-in, slick his hair back, put on like the Jason mask, and just stand there and just be like that. Like, that could be him. But he was just a mauler. But then you paired that with a very cerebral, really strong, Corey Linsley. Like that, and that's where and Nick Mangle was not necessarily a mauler, Bob, but no. Nick had a high.
But TJ Downing was
a mauler.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, right? But again, it goes into it, right? Like, so your center doesn't necessarily have to be a mauler. Like, Seth is very, very smart. Corey, very smart. Excuse me. Nick Mangold's very smart. Body position, call out the fronts, but then you had other maulers around him, right? Like, they could climb and get, and Norwell cannot bend the best, but dude, he would maul you, right? So, Marcus Hall, boom, double bird, right? Like, not necessarily the highest football acumen, but would just go, right? That's awesome. So again, when you set up an offensive line like that, you have to have those kind of pieces, especially interior. I like that you said that guard center combo and that interior D line. Like, those are the guys that you got to have that just can be nasty, man. Can be nasty. Gas station. They need to be the epitome of Waffle House ready, because the athletes are more on the outside. The Waffle House ready guys, like, your ability to decipher what you want on the laminated menu, and then to pound the All-American with extra waffles, and however you want your hash brown smothered, peppered, whatever, doesn't matter. And you know what? Say, hey, I don't want the toast. Just give me more waffles. And then a fight breaks out. You're able to just say, bump it. It's already just floating in there, but I'm still going to go maul people, right? And then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to order another one. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you want in the inside 5.
That is true. I mean, sitting down, Schlegs, and it's important, folks, to remember, when you're eating at Waffle House, you always want to eat with a wide base, because when you pop up, you want to make certain that you've got like your balance about you, you've got good stability. Like, if you take a punch, maybe a stray bullet, like, I mean, not to make light of things, I watched a dude get shot. Like, you spin around. Can you restabilize with your balance, maybe avoid the second, and then turn into Denzel Washington equalizer style, grab that knife and pin it into someone's throat? Like, that's whatever you got to do. Okay. But that's being Waffle House ready, because all that's probably happening between the hours of 12:30 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. And you're probably half overserved, but can you analyze the situation and can you be ready just tomorrow? Because also, Schlegel, as you talked about, you're not there fighting in a parking lot. This isn't the octagon. You're fighting in a booth. You have no, can you just get underneath somebody and get them up off the ground, leverage, drive them back? All you got to do is move them. You got to move them forward a little bit, create a seam, and then you'll be ready to go, because you're probably going to have to defend your whole table. That's what it's all about. We'll have to ask Connor O'Gara about that, because he's probably never heard about that. And he's a guy who's from the North who now lives in the South, where there's Waffle Houses aplenty. And my son, I always take him to the original Pancake House for his breakfast. I take all the kids there. My oldest asked to go to Waffle House, Schlegs, and I go, I don't know if you're ready for Waffle House. Maybe when you can drive next year, I'll come in at night after drinking till 1:30, 2 in the morning, and you can drive me to Waffle House for your birthday, and then I'll show you what goes on at a Waffle House. And if you can, be Waffle House ready. But that'll be
just sitting there. It'd be amazing. He's just sitting there driving, right? Like when you leave, and then he's driving you home, and he just has the Waffle House hat on.
Oh yeah,
like that'd be amazing.
It'll be perfect. All right, attention parents and athletes, protect what matters most with Export mouthguards, trusted by professional athletes, designed by NHL team dentists. Export guards are scientifically tested to absorb those high-impact hits, so they protect that grill, which Schlegel is not as good, but his brain, well, it's still mush, and it's all right. But that grill, want to looking crispy.
So
Export mouthguards feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including the patented use of carbon fiber. They 3D print it right to your grill, so you get more protection, better performance, max comfort, which is key, clear communication. Focus on your game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Go to exportguards.com/Bobby today and save 15%. Export, protect what matters most. Connor O'Gara, Saturdays Down South, coming up next. I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like... I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and pleased to welcome in a guy, reoccurring guest. I think he was actually the first guest we even had on the program, our guy Connor O'Gara, coming on here. And Connor, we are now sitting here. It is the final weekend before we get into the first ever 12-team CFP. We've got some Big Ten, we've got some SEC, little ACC sprinkled in. I mean, everybody is going to be playing aplenty. We're going to start off with this. I don't think anybody would have had on their bingo card the SEC only getting 3 teams in to the CFP. Greg Sankey did not look like a happy camper with regard to that. How frustrated / upset are people? And who in your mind do you think would have been the most deserving team out of the SEC to get in?
Let me first say the selection committee got it right. Putting in Alabama over SMU would have been a joke. It would have been an absolute joke. And if you were going to punish a team that went 11-1 in the regular season, that earned that extra game because it ran the table in the ACC, to put in a 9-3 Alabama team that just got whipped in Norman, then that would have just made a mockery of the system. And I would not have been on board with that. So I had no problem with the way that the field played out. Honestly, I don't really feel bad for any of the teams that got left out. Okay. Like the Miami thing, I know that Jim Phillips, in his very unbiased opinion, thought that Miami should have gotten in. I think that you should be able to beat just win one of those, those 2 games that you lost, and we're having a different conversation. But instead, you lose to Syracuse in the Carrier Dome. You just can't do that when obviously everybody knows what's being said about you as a bubble team coming in. And then, I think that if you were trying to make an argument for a 3-loss SEC team, I would have been okay with South Carolina, because South Carolina was playing the best football. And yeah, it was never really going to be an argument that was going to work in their favor, because they lost to Ole Miss by 24 points and they lost to Alabama. Yeah, it was a close game, but they lost. They were playing the best football down the stretch. Lenore Sellers is going to return as one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. That defense is absolutely legit. They were so fun to watch. But at the same time, you lost 3 games. And I talked to Shane Beamer on Saturday at the SEC championship, and he gets it. He's well aware. He's like, yeah, you can't leave it up to the committee. And, we had our chances and didn't do enough in the first half of the season. And is he right to feel like they would have been one of the toughest matchups, one of the scariest teams to face in the playoff? Absolutely. But your entire body of work has to count. And that's why I think the selection committee was perfectly in the right to have the field that it did.
Well, let's talk about this game, because now you got the offensive player of the year in the SEC coming to Ohio Stadium December 21st. How do you feel? What are your initial reactions to this game going down in the shoe? Tennessee versus Ohio State, both defenses, offenses ranked in the top 20. It's going to be a really good matchup.
Yeah, kind of a throwback type matchup. And for those assuming that Tennessee will not know how to handle the cold, let the record show snow this week in Knoxville. So I'm just saying that they're kind of a northern team of the SEC. They might be able to embody that. That's kind of the way that they play too. If you've seen Dylan Sampson this year and the way that he's run the football, just inspired, really, really inspiring. For my money, he's been the best player in the SEC this year on either side of the ball. He had some fumbling issues down the stretch. Also got banged up in that game against Vanderbilt. That's kind of the thing to keep in mind here, and maybe what should give Ohio State fans a little bit of hope. Tennessee skill players got really banged up in that regular season finale, wherein they essentially clinched a playoff berth by beating Vanderbilt in Nashville. They watched Dante Thornton go down mid-game after he was on the Randy Moss Thanksgiving type start to that one. Brew McCoy goes down with a hamstring injury in pregame warmups. And then at the end of the game, with 2.5 minutes left on the same play, Sampson and Squirrel White, one of their veteran receivers, they both went down. So I don't know how healthy this Tennessee team is going to be. And for a team that had their 2 losses come in true road games, I don't know that their offense is going to be clicking on all cylinders. It's a team that was shut out in the first half in 3 consecutive games. Now, they went 2-1 in those games because their defense is awesome, and their defensive line is the key unit for that team. But a lot of questions about Tennessee, even after they were able to kind of lock in and be able to get to 10-2 to make the field.
Connor, what do you think is the story behind that offensive inconsistency? Because we've seen that there's been some rough starts for Tennessee, then there's been some rough finishes. They looked really good to start that Georgia game, and then I was down there, and then all of a sudden, Georgia takes control. But what's led to these inconsistencies and these dry spells from what Josh Heupel has always been this offensive guru where they throw the ball all over the yard?
It's been a passing game identity problem to me. And, I think if you watch Nico, it really doesn't take long to see the talent and why this guy was worth Tennessee essentially fighting the NCAA and saying, you're not allowed to enforce these rules that were very much in flux, and we're going to stand by what we paid this guy. There's a reason why he was so decorated as a recruit, and why it was Nico and Arch in that conversation in the 2023 class. And you also see why this guy has not necessarily taken off the levels that many thought he would after the start that he got off to. The deep ball just hasn't been there in the way that they hoped for. Now, he could still hit a guy 25, 30 yards downfield on a line, and all of a sudden it's a 75-yard touchdown. It's all she wrote. If Dante Thornton is making plays like that in this game, that's when this Tennessee offense is cooking. But being able to kind of drop that ball in a bucket downfield and, take the pressure off of Dylan Sampson just hasn't really been there for this team. And with, some of the injuries that they've had at receiver, you kind of wonder, where's that consistency been? And they've had to rely on Dylan Sampson way more than they intended to. So that's kind of been holding this offense back at points, as you've had, just a passing game that has felt like it's been very much in flux throughout the regular season.
Connor, when you look at this game, just breaking it down, how they're going to win, one of the things that pops up to me is, you talked about the identity crisis, but it's also the identity crisis in the red zone. Like they're 88th in the country in red zone offense. Like you get down there, you got to score. Their defense is really good, but in order to beat an Ohio State, like you got to score. So what do you think? What are some other things in this game that Tennessee has to do to be able to keep it competitive and potentially win?
I mean, it's cliche. They need short fields. I think, if they're starting some of these possessions, at the 40 or at the 50 or in plus territory, that obviously bodes really, really well for what they would like to be able to do. Dylan Sampson can't fumble the football. I'll praise that guy, and he runs through contact. He has been awesome this year in this Josh Heupel running attack. But they can't fumble the football. They can't have these red zone fumbles. It can't be a situation in which Tennessee is just coming away from red zone trips without anything on the board. They had some kicking issues mid-season that they've been able to kind of work through as well. But that is really important in a game that, look, you might look up and have the winner of this game scoring 21 points. I don't think that's crazy at all when we think that the defenses are the two strengths going into this one. But, it's going to be fascinating to see this Josh Heupel offense work in this atmosphere against a defense that is really, really solid, despite obviously the way that it played out in the regular season finale. But I think it's just about making sure, like you said, that you're not coming away with those red zone trips being empty and making sure that you're holding on to the football, taking care of the football in some of these tight areas.
It's Connor O'Gara, Saturdays Down South. Give him a follow on X at CJ O'Gara. Does a great job down there, SaturdaysDownSouth.com. And we talked about Nico and his inability to kind of be consistent with the deep ball. Unless he's only a second-year player, didn't play it all last year. They've got a good progression for him, and you can see that talent. We talk about the cold, and I don't necessarily, like you said, Tennessee, Kentucky, like the northern reaches of the SEC, like it gets cool. There's times where it's snowing, it's going to be chilly. But one of the things people lamented a little bit was CJ Stroud when he was here. Like he's a Southern California quarterback. Nico he's from Long Beach, if I'm not mistaken. Like that, it takes a little bit of time and it's an adjustment. Is there any concern just simply on him as being a quarterback where, this is first year as a starter. It's been cool. He's been through a winter. But now having to actually play in this as opposed to playing in 80 and sunny, which is what he probably did throughout his entire high school.
Yeah, there could be. And I don't think it's going to be a high volume passing attack. I don't think that they would like to put themselves in situations where they're attacking Caleb Downs downfield. Like that just wouldn't really make sense with what this team has kind of struggled to do this year. So it's probably going to be a lot of those quick hitters and, we're going to try and get a matchup we like on the outside, quick slant. Let's get Nico comfortable. Let's have him feeling like he's in some sort of a rhythm. It's been a lot easier said than done this year with this offense. And they have just looked stuck in the mud in the first half for too many of these games. And I think that they're going to rely still heavily on that backfield. And Dylan Sampson's going to be a big part of it. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking on the sideline and, Nico is sitting there, he's got his hands, with the hand warmers and stuff like that. He's by the heated bench. You saw him kind of struggle a little bit in that game against Georgia. I don't remember how cold that was. I'm not going to pretend that was Midwest cold or anything like that day. But, he's going to be asked to kind of rise above that. And that can't be an issue in the way that this new playoff is set up. You got to be able to obviously play in all weathers. And I think, when you sign up to play in a northern SEC school like Tennessee, you know what you're getting into.
Hey, real fast, Connor, have you ever been to a Waffle House? And then 2, what do you think is going to happen with this bracket play moving forward next year? How are they going to change some things up?
I have been to a Waffle House, but not often. I had a Waffle House right by me, right by my college apartment at Indiana, and it's no longer there in Bloomington. But there's one in downtown Bloomington that was right next to where I used to live. So I didn't really venture in there late night, but it was more of a traditional breakfast spot for us. So, went in there a few times. There's one probably like 3 miles from my house.
Where did you go to eat after you got done drinking, Connor? I mean, I know that you're hitting up all the spots. Bloomington, B-Town is a party town now. Don't get it twisted.
Big time. There was a pizza place called Rockets that was in downtown Bloomington. Right. There was a Taco Bell that was right there. That's got to be one of the most profitable Taco Bells on the face of the earth. How many college students they get at that spot? But there are some good spots. Kilroy Sports always, would have some good eats. Kilroy's, down on Kirkwood is a legendary spot as well. So there's some good spots. You didn't have to go to Waffle House per se. Now, if I were living in what's actually the South and not Orlando, I think Waffle House would be a bigger part of my life, but I can honestly say I've never witnessed Waffle House fights. I've only heard the horror stories, the Reddit stories that people speak of. So it's something I need to be able to check off my bucket list. But yeah, what were we talking about again? What was the other question there, Schlegel?
That was good enough. That was good enough. That's all I needed.
Yeah, that's all right. We're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna get Connor back, more with him, and some of this bracket breakdown here coming up next. All right, back with Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South. Give him a follow on X at CJ O'Gara. Does a great job. Go check out all the stuff. Indiana guy, living in Orlando, trapped in the SEC, doing a great job covering them. And, we're talking like a lot of Ohio State, Tennessee. And before we get into the larger bracket play, this Tennessee defensive line is pretty good. Break down this defense for us, this volunteer defense for folks in Ohio that, maybe don't necessarily know a lot about it. How good the linebackers, where they're at in the secondary. I think the defensive line is definitely the strength if you look at how they've been able to play this year.
Yeah, the get off of James Pierce Jr., there'll be a couple of moments in this game where you'll say, who's that guy? Like, how did he get off the ball so quickly? And he's just instantly in the backfield. He does that. And he might not necessarily fill up the stat sheet, but you will see his impact. You will see him speed up this Ohio State offense. And that's really been a strength of this team throughout this year. And Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator, who's been there for all 4 years of the Josh Heupel era, he was at Penn State before that. He spent time at Illinois. He deserves a lot of credit because that unit had an entirely new secondary. And so I came into this year thinking their Achilles heel is going to be when they can't get pressure because they've got all these new pieces on the back end. And I kind of saw what that looks like with LSU a season before. You have all these new pieces, and buddy, if Harold Perkins ain't getting home, you're going to be in some trouble. And I thought that's how it was going to play out with this Tennessee defense. That has not been the case at all. If you haven't seen Jermod McCoy play yet, he is special, really, really special in that secondary. I don't know how many matchups we're going to get with he and Jeremiah Smith, what that's going to look like, but it's one of the best matchups of the playoff, the way that this is setting up in the first round. And this defense, they're kind of bend but don't break. They fall behind early in that game against Vandy 14-0. And you're thinking, oh man, this is more chaos. And, part of it was because they had an opening kickoff for a touchdown. Dylan Sampson fumble sets up a short field. And then they just lock in. And then Tennessee scores 36 of the next 39 points because that defense is so good. So just like we talked about with Tennessee offense, you got to be able to capitalize on those opportunities in the red zone. They're going to probably get you off script at some point. Their defensive line is that good. And it's just a matter of what are you doing on those 3rd and 13, 3rd and 15 scenarios, because those are the plays that are probably going to define this game.
Yeah, don't get in them. That's what you do. I would say this, like looking in their 2 losses, right? In those 2 losses, Nico didn't have any passing touchdowns. And then also in those 2 losses, they didn't affect the quarterback. They had 0 sacks versus Georgia. They had 2 sacks versus Arkansas. So to your point, they're going to have to affect Will Howard, and Nico's going to have to be able to do some things with the football in the air should the running game not be there and they get behind the sticks. Let's go to this. When you look at, I'm going to take it now in the college football playoff. You got Texas, right? You got Texas playing Clemson. Clemson's coming off of a big win, but it's at Texas. You got Georgia on a bye. You got this Tennessee game. Who in this SEC do you think now? Carson Beck's kind of, we don't know what the situation is. Where are you leaning in the SEC making a run in this college football playoff?
Texas's path is really nice, in my opinion, and the way that this sets up. And I mean, no disrespect to Arizona State and what could potentially await them. The Cam Scatterboo dynamic has been so fun to watch. I'm such a big Kenny Dillingham fan, so I don't mean this as any disrespect to Arizona State, but Texas's path is really nice. And I say that having just watched this team in person in Atlanta, I saw some of the ducks that Quinn Ewers was throwing. And that's what they are. They were ducks. I mean, I don't know why he still was under the impression that he should go after Dalen Everett. Very, very bad idea, in my opinion. It did not work out particularly well, but you still just trust Sark and you trust this defense. I think you could make a real case that the Texas defense is the best individual unit in all of college football. And it might be the best individual unit in the college football playoff. Now, it's not going to look as good because obviously they lose the 2 games against Georgia. Their defense was not the problem in those games. And I know that Gunnar Stockton came out and had a great scoring drive to start off the second half of the SEC championship and put that Texas defense on its heels. But kind of go back and look at some of the ways that Georgia struggled to move the ball in both of those victories against this Texas defense. It is absolutely legit. So that's the constant. And that's why I think the selection committee has kind of looked at them similar to Penn State and just said, you know what? I know you guys lack the quality wins. We just think that you're awesome and that your floor is unbelievably high. And I think that's what's going to benefit Texas. I think they take care of Clemson. I think they're able to get to the national championship. Yeah, I think they get to a matchup against Ohio State, who beats Oregon. And we get a Texas-Ohio State Quinn Ewers revenge game. Not a revenge game. Not a revenge game. A Quinn Ewers reunion with Ohio State in that semifinal. It'd be fascinating to see that play out.
I mean, as you look at this, I mean, if you're Oregon and Georgia, like you've got to feel like, what did you do to deserve like the path that you're ultimately going to get? Whereas like if you're sitting there in those 3 and 4 spots, it's like, man, that 5 and 6, it's so much better. And I feel like, I mean, Connor, I know I was talking with Ross Bjork today or yesterday on my radio show about this. And, you know, he was saying that they'll try to change what they can. It'll definitely be in 2 years if they can do some things after this season. But like the 1 and the 2 seeds really got no favors. That 5 and 6 path looks far better right now when you don't do conventional seeding and you're having to meet all these other restrictions and constraints to be able to seed this tournament.
I agree. It's got to change. We can seed 1 through 12 and then just top 4 seeds get the first round buys. What's wrong with that? You know, I know you still want to incentivize conference championships. You can still incentivize conference championships by having one of those first 4 seeds get a buy. I think there's so much value in that still. You know, and I do think while Texas got such a favorable draw, I still think there's such immense value in a 12-team playoff. And then hopefully soon we're going to see, you know, the 14-team playoff or the 16-team, whatever this is. But there's so much value in having 60 minutes to not play football and to not have your guys exposed to injuries that can happen in any given, fall Saturday. And I think that there is still going to be an emphasis on that. But I agree 100%. Like, with all due respect to Boise State didn't deserve a first-round bye. You played tough against Oregon. That's awesome. Your other wins did not suggest that you deserved a first-round bye. Arizona State, awesome season. Can't say enough good things about Kenny Dillingham. Are they worthy of a first-round bye compared to some of the other resumes, some of the other paths that it took to get there? In my opinion, no. And what you do is you end up rewarding the 5 seed and making that such an advantageous spot to be able to have a path to a national championship. So I do think those changes will be made now that we've seen how it looks once it plays out.
Who's the team that you think has the dark horse of this bracket? Somebody that you don't think somebody is expecting to potentially get into those semifinal games?
It's a good question. It's a good question because, and I'm not pandering. I swear I'm not pandering by saying this. Is Ohio State the dark horse now?
I mean,
kind of. Like, I think we're
right.
Think about it though. Having that rematch against Oregon, that's a good draw for Ohio State, in that you know what worked, you know what didn't work, right? Yes, it's still the number 1 team in the country. It's the only remaining FBS unbeaten. 60 minutes against Dan Lanning is not particularly fun. And with a team that has as many strengths as Oregon, I'm not saying that it's by any means an easy matchup, but you're going to have a difficult matchup with whoever you're playing with that second playoff game. And getting a Tennessee team that could potentially be banged up and then having a rematch against Oregon, I do think that there is a world in which all of a sudden we're talking about Ohio State in the semifinal going, wait a minute, is Ohio State about to win a national championship? Is Ryan Day somehow going to move past the disaster that happened against Michigan? And all of a sudden we're having these different conversations about the Buckeyes. I think Ohio State is set up to be the best team to do that. As much as I would love to be able to sit here and say, oh, it's Indiana. People are sleeping on them. Kurt Cignetti's going to have the lads fired up. They're going to go into South Bend and win that game that your boy Marcus Freeman just cannot afford to lose, not in terms of his job security, but in terms of legacy. You got to win that football game if you're the head coach of Notre Dame. I would love to be able to say that. I can't realistically say that. I think Ohio State, is oddly enough as it is, has now found itself in position to be that dark horse.
As we leave you with this, I mean, do you think these teams, the first round games, go so well that there's a push? And I know we've got the bowl system and the tie-in, and it works pretty well with the six, but it's a hell of a lot of travel, Connors, for everybody. And to get to the championship game, I mean, it could be 4 road games essentially, or maybe 3. But the cost of that, the toll on the fans, I mean, there's a lot there. Do you think we ultimately get to 2 rounds of home sites?
I don't think so. I think the bowl execs still have a thing to say about that. I wouldn't rule anything out, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And that's something that I'm going to talk about with Gary Stokin, the CEO of the Peach Bowl. I'm usually able to talk to him a couple of times a year, and that's one of the types of things that is a pressing issue for those bowl execs who would like to be able to obviously have these neutral site games, these season defining games, instead of having the home playoff, that as great as that is, as great as that dynamic is going to be to follow, instead of having that become the new constant and the new norm. And there's other issues facing some of these home playoff games. I'm not sure how much you guys have talked about that. And Columbus is a little bit different because Columbus is a bigger city than everywhere else that's hosting these games outside of, I mean, like it's right up there with Austin, obviously, in terms of, size and what you're able to accommodate. But there are a lot of these places that you're looking up going, I don't think you have the infrastructure to host consecutive playoff games back to back with the limited amount of hotels and what you're asking of these campuses to be able to do. And I think that would be some of the pushback. I'm interested to see how that plays out this year. But yeah, I mean, like College Station, Texas, I don't know that College Station, Texas would be built to host consecutive playoff games on a whim all of a sudden, have these hotel prices that are just insane and they can't house everyone. And it just kind of creates, some circumstances that are different than if you're hosting these games in Atlanta or Phoenix or something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, the Ohio State was dealing with that already with Oregon. And like when you travel out there, there's just logistical issues with schools that aren't necessarily equipped and weren't designed for the gravity of what college football ultimately is, the magnitude. Connor, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much today, man. Hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Gentlemen, appreciate it.
Does a great job there. Saturdays Down South. Make sure to check him out. Coming up next, we got our headlines. Some big news. The Buckeye playoff game. I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like. I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer. Great job there by Connor, as he was tremendous in talking that headline. We're going to start off with this before we get to a little news about some of the stuff going on at Marshall. But college game day, Ohio State's going to be a night game. Kirk Herbstreit, Fowler are going to be on the call. Game day is going to do a 2-stop appearance. Well, you got 2 days, Schlegs. So you know what? We can toss that up there, Pat. They're going to be in South Bend, Indiana, for Notre Dame and Indiana on Friday night. And logistically, it works out. It's easy peasy for them. So they can go to Notre Dame, poof David Copperfield. It's about a 4.5-hour drive in a car, probably when they have to pull the buses and everything else. And then Saturday, you're going to have SEC Nation. You're going to have Big Noon. You're going to have the Big Ten pregame show. And you're going to have game day. It will all be in Columbus, Ohio, the epicenter of the college football world next Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. You have a Friday night game, then you got a slate of games on Saturday. Everybody's going to be out of the deer woods, locked and loaded, because gun season in Ohio is over. Hope everybody had a safe and successful deer hunting week with straight wall rifles in the great state of Ohio. But man, what an exciting time. First ever college football playoff expanded. It's in Columbus, man, in the shoe. The house that Chick built on the banks of the Olentangy at night. Gonna be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty tremendous. I'm juiced. I'm excited for it. I know that you are. It's going to be a night game, so like the game day being down there, they'll be there all day. Get down in the morning and Schlegs. The question is, can you drink yourself warm? I mean, I've heard you can. You've got to try to find the bottom, and then you got to find another, and you may have to go from some beers to some bourbon to try to get that internal warming that you talk about so much. You always tell me, Schlegs, about that internal heat that you really need, where you can just feel it kind of just permeating right out of your soul. So super excited about that. We knew ESPN wouldn't pass up an opportunity to get to Columbus, especially with the Fox tie-in now. So they don't get a chance to do it very often, but they will be here and be right locked in and ready. Some news, Marshall. So Ohio State beat Marshall this year. Marshall ended up winning the Fun Belt. However, their coach Charles
the Fun Belt. I like that.
You know, you've never heard it called the Fun Belt?
No, I like it. It's fun.
I thought Steph was what I thought that's what he called your belt.
Boom, right here. Boom. Fun belt. Fun belt.
Fun belt. She said, pop that fun belt off and let's have some fun times, Schlegs. You know, I mean,
where are you going with this? Where are you going?
It's like the fun
entire
belt.
Marshall football team enters. Go ahead.
I mean, I just say the fun belt holds up the fun times. I mean, you open it up and poof, the fun escapes. Charles Huff, the head coach for Marshall, who did a good job. I thought he was highly entertaining. It was Ohio State. Remember they were talking about the biscuits and gravy or whatever they had for their NIL. What was it?
I think it's Tutors.
Tutors, yeah. Sounds
right
good.
There when you cross the river, man.
Oh, yeah. It's right there. Listen, I pass it on my way down to P-Town. We go down to Portsmouth. My wife's from there. But Charles Huff, so he's leaving. And he's not getting fired. He's kind of leaving. I guess they're kind of pushing him out. It's not necessarily the greatest situation. But he's going to be leaving. And with that, his entire team, everybody, I don't know if it's all 85 scholarship players or what, but they said the entire team is now in the portal. Now, they don't all have to leave. They may not find places to go. A lot of them may come with him to Southern Miss. This is a team in Marshall that just won the Sun Belt. So, you know what? They were pretty good. He did a great job. And how many of those guys go with him there? Well, we'll ultimately see. But it's going to be a rough situation. And who the heck is going to be playing in this game as I guess they're going to be facing Army in the Independence Bowl on December 28th, and that's an Army squad, Schlegs, that's good. And my goodness, if you want to see 800 yards rushing in a game, there's a chance you might see it in the Independence Bowl.
Oh, my gosh. Well, this goes back to, you know, administration and, you know, what does our NIL look like and how are we trying to recruit? Because that's the thing, right? At the end of the day, you're still ultimately judged based on wins and losses, right?
Yeah.
And how do I want to go do that? And what does the administration want to do? And hey, we just won the Sun Belt, but like, you're not going to give me any extra resources to continue to do that because Dillingham even talked about it. As you win, it gets more expensive to win, right? Because you have to have that success because your guys want to stay. Other people want to poach, especially in the Sun Belts and the Conference USAs, right, of the world. So that being said, man, everybody's going. But who do you bring in? It needs to be selective. It needs to be somebody that has some ties. They need to be a great communicator and build relationships. I love Marshall. You know that. Like your brother went there. It's a great little spot. But it's just kind of surprising that everybody's in the portal. And they say nearly everybody. But that's still a lot of dudes.
It is. It's a ton. All right, coming up next, we've got our Tailgate Talk, which will bring to you. I got one great one from yesterday's show, Schlegs. Coming up next, Bobby Carpenter Show.
Get the most out of work, life, and all your outdoor adventures with top-selling upgrades for your truck. Guaranteed fit, free shipping, easy install, expert support, and thousands of dealers just a click away. Bring your truck to life. Real Truck. Upgrade today and save between $50 and $400 on select Real Truck products. Visit realtruck.com/specials.
All right, Schlegs, here we go. Tailgate Talk brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. Even though Cyber Week's over, go check them out, realtruck.com. Spend $100. Use promo code Bobby at checkout. You get your free hat. The Schlegs is rocking right there. They got stuff for your truck, your Jeep, your Bronco, interior, exterior. It's all there for you. Schlegs and I have used them. Believe me, it makes that thing look sweet. I can't wait till it gets warm again to drive my truck around with all this, or my Jeep rather, with all the sweet Real Truck stuff I've got on it. Go to realtruck.com. All right, Schlegs. I'm going to fire this question right at you from yesterday. It's from Joe Brown _forever. He's been pretty good getting active in here. Do you think that playing Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and Georgia is honestly the best situation for Ryan Day? If they would have gotten one of the easier paths and they beat SMU and Arizona State en route to a semifinal matchup, I feel as if most of Buckeye Nation would give him a little to no credit. Having the path least traveled may be the best course of action. I agree. Let me hear your thoughts, Schlegs, in a minute or so.
Yeah, a minute or so. You know what? I was looking at this right as Connor was talking. We're number 8. When we won the first college football playoff, we were number 4. And everybody's like, you have the hardest path, and you beat Alabama. And then we played Oregon in the national championship that suffered from Nassau. And again, what Connor said, right? You got Tennessee, an SEC team, rematch versus Oregon, 1-point loss, neutral site in the Rose Bowl now. Then Texas, again, that's going to be great. And then potentially beating Georgia or even a Notre Dame for that matter. Guys, that's exactly what you want. The harder, the better for him, because now it's like top 5 matchup, top 5 match all the time. And then it just bodes well for him. But again, you got to live where your feet are. You got to handle your business versus Tennessee in the shoe, game 1.
All right, that's it for Tailgate Talk, brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. Dude of the Week coming up next. I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like... I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer. All right, Schlegs, get to do a Buckeye this week. Maybe not the best situation for him. OSU men's soccer player, their soccer team's been on a tear. Nathan Demian, native of Vancouver, British Columbia, caught a stray bullet off campus outside. I guess he's doing all right. I think he's in fairly stable condition. But Schlegs, there's no one else we could give dude of the week to.
Nope, that's it, man. And those guys running around him, and especially where they are. In the soccer championship, guys. I mean, like, it's just a tough thing. Thoughts and prayers with him. He's doing better. But yeah, they're in the Final Four of the NCAA. Men's soccer. I mean, that's, again, Ross Bjork, I see you, bro. Hey, everybody's a winner. Be a Buckeye, win things. That's what it should be about.
Men's soccer teams turned it around. 6 years ago, they were trash. 5 years ago, now they're in the Final Four. Kudos to them. Listen, last weekend off, Buckeyes. Next week, let's get juiced. 12:30. It's going to be a big week as we lead into the first Buckeye home playoff game in college football history. Stay locked in on the Bobby Carpenter Show.